Okay, so I chose to do an article. It is called "Is It Necessary? Quality Control in Cataloging." I chose this because I wanted to select a topic that would also reinforce each of us to think about our own professional standards and workflow. And that is why I chose cataloging and quality control. It's important because, as noted in the article, libraries are the only social institution responsible for control, organization, communication, and preservation of information about the published output of human knowledge and expression. So basically, the article describes an academic university and their processes and their workflow to minimize any errors that they found in their cataloging process. So any errors in creating the MARC record, or any errors that were created when processing the item. So that would include any bib labels, any spine labels. I believe this library only had 2 reference librarians and 2 aides. So the 2 librarians were basically cataloging, they were doing reference, all of that. And to minimize any errors in their work, what they were doing was their program was actually set up where they could go back and have their system look if there were any errors in the records that they were creating. And if there were, then they could catch them before the book was actually put out onto the shelves for circulation. However, even if the books were already put out onto the shelf, the 2 librarians and the 2 aides, they were basically doing or generating reports where they could find the items that had errors, even if they were already on the shelf, bring them back to their computers, fix the errors, fix if there were any errors on the bib labels or the spine labels. So one way that they basically did quality control was they checked their work, they checked each other's work, and then they had the system check its own work, and then they actually went out to the shelves and they pulled the books off the shelves to see if the books had any errors on them. So while reading the article, these are the questions that I was starting to ask myself. What process of workflow and how it's performed? How much information is too much? What quality control measures are in place? So basically, I was asking myself these questions as if I were a cataloger. What would my process of workflow be, and how would I perform it? And then how much information would I put on to the actual MARC record? Because basically I believe that the more information you put, the better, but it can also get too convoluted and too busy if you put too much information. And then the last one was what quality control measures are in place. And basically for this one, personally, if it was me doing cataloging, I would actually try to slow myself down because I have to remember that it's quality, not quantity. It's pretty straightforward and basic that the materials have to be organized so people can find them. So it's not just organization for the shelves, it's organizations for the records themselves. So patrons, or basically anybody, even reference librarians, can go from one hit to another to another. I mean, you don't want to go from something like storytelling to pirates. So obviously there would be an error in that. And then you would be basically following and proper interpretation of cataloging rules, which would be key to quality, to eliminating errors, and ensuring materials are organized for ease of access. And basically for a search of patrons, or when patrons are doing searches. And then it cannot be stressed enough when it comes to interpretation, because we each interpret things differently, and in doing so we must remember to correctly interpret rules as we are taught. So basically we might be taught one way, and then when we get into cataloging, like into an office that does cataloging, they might have their own interpretations of the rules. So that would be kind of where mistakes would come about. And then one error or mistake can lead a patron or library staff in the wrong direction. And then it would not hurt to triple check or have a colleague or cohort to verify any work that you're doing before submitting. And then, like I said earlier, to remember that quality is better than quantity. So when I say quality, it's not easily defined, but in the article, they refer to it as there's extent, which refers to how much information is provided in bibliographic record, and then accuracy, which refers to correctness of what is supplied by the cataloger. And then with that being said, personally, in my opinion, like I mentioned before, the more information that you have, the better. And then that way you can generate more hits or results. And if catalogers don't put the data in the record, it won't be pulled up. So you have to make sure that whatever you're putting on the record actually pertains to that title that's in front of you. So we have to make sure that the record displays correctness. Quality control, workflow, and processes is a continuous process of assessing, evaluating, planning, and improving. And then being watchful of workflow practices, which is creation of bib records, processing library materials, which would include the spine and the bib labels, and then not waiting until after the mistake happens. Correct the mistake before it becomes a crisis. After reading this article, because I work for HSPLS, I wanted to see if they have any cataloging standards or guidelines, or even practices that they put into play to eliminate any of their errors, just to ensure that the library's resources are accessible. And then I'll share the response that I got in a bit. So this is the HSPLS cataloging process. So basically, HSPLS uses RDA and AACR2 standards. They use the Dewey Decimal Classification because we are a public library, not academic. We also use the Mark 21. And then there is also authority control. So what I'll do is I'll read the response that I got from the cataloging department for HSPLS. And then basically they state that they follow nationally accepted cataloging standards and guidelines when creating bibliographic records for its materials. And then as it relates to RDA and AACR2 standards, all descriptive cataloging is done according to RDA standards with some local exceptions. And then prior to November 2017, cataloging was done in accordance with AACR2. HSPLS also interprets these standards according to Library of Congress policy statements or the earlier Library of Congress rule interpretations. And for the Dewey Decimal Classification, all classification numbers for books are formulated according to the latest edition of the Dewey Decimal Classification. And all Mark 21 bibliographic data representation of HSPLS materials are encoded in Mark 21, or according to Mark 21, which is an internationally recognized formatting standard. And for their authority control, all name or topical headings assigned to a bibliographic record are verified against the Library of Congress name authority file or the Library of Congress subject headings. Local authority records are then created for each authorized form of a heading so that each name or topic is represented by a single distinct term. And then cross-references are added to authority records to guide users from an unused term to the authorized heading. And then this is just something else that I got from the cataloging section for HSPLS. So while adherence to national cataloging standards help ensure the bibliographic data can be reliably achieved, careful work habits on the part of cataloging staff are important as well. Staff must not only key in data accurately, but also be able to proofread their work accurately. Ongoing review of bibliographic records is essential in making sure that HSPLS resources are accessible in a keyword search environment. Okay, so with all that being said, basically we each have to take our own preventative measures to make sure that we're entering and interpreting the rules correctly. So, before I end and pass it over to Lila, I would like to ask everyone to write down one preventative measure that they can put in place for themselves to ensure that they are providing quality work while cataloging. And then if everybody can share whatever they wrote down and why. Okay, so after everybody is done sharing, our topic, Lila and I's topic was quality and the future for library catalogers. So I've gone over the quality control in cataloging, and then Lila will guide you guys through the future for library catalogers.